Hello there and welcome to Knitting Together HQ. We're talking tension, not the fact that knitting can reduce tension, which it can, but the tension that's created when you produce a piece of knitting and it's all a bit taut and tight. Is that what tension is, Nettie?
It is. It is really how sort of tight your fabric feels, and the designers who've created our patterns have always made sure that the tension that they give you is right to produce the garment or the item that you're going to make. Tension, if it's too loose, it's going to be too floppy. If it's too tight, it's going to be too stiff. And if we have a little look at our beautiful monkey jumper here,
yes.
This is an example of, you know, how good something looks when the tension's right. The fabric's nice and even, and everything just works, and it's got the right kind of drape as well.
Yes, and I know it might sound weird, it feels right.
Exactly,
you know.
Exactly. So I've got a little example of tension that is very poor.
Okay.
So it's like, so
Okay.
if you're not concentrating, you could end up with something like this. So
where the stitches are all different sizes.
They are all different sizes, so they kind of go from a certain size, then they go bigger, then they go smaller. It's pulling the fabric in, so it actually changes the size of what you're doing, even though this is all knitted on the same needles.
Okay.
So, and then, you know, they've gone smaller, tighter stitches one end and bigger stitches the other, and it just makes it all look very uneven and lumpy.
Yes.
So tension is one of those things that it's the sort of stage that you sort of think, oh, I'll be okay. I don't need to do tension, I can knit, but even if you can knit, it is worth doing your tension square, and you'll find the tension that you need on your pattern. I'll just show you the type of thing it is, and tension is measured in the number of stitches and rows over 10 centimetres, and all of our patterns where tension is important will have this information for you.
So you know that in a square that's 10 centimetres, you know, both sides, that you should have, in this instance, 22 stitches and 28 rows.
Exactly so. So you'll always get a good result. Now, getting to the right tension is something that takes a little bit of practice, and I'll show you just the difference it can make when your tension isn't quite right. So here we have, so we've seen our swatch where the tension is very poor. So this piece here is, let's say, the right tension, tight tension, and this piece here is very loose tension. So they've come out at quite different sizes.
I like the loose tension.
Yeah, the loose tension is floppy.
It's, yes, for a big baggy jumper it might be good.
That's right, but the point is about working the tension to the pattern is that the designer has already worked out, taken the work out of you deciding what tension you need to be, and you just need to be able to get to the tension stated on the pattern, and your garment will turn out the right size.
Okay.
You can imagine that if you want to knit a jumper that's 12 to 14 and your knitting is too tight, you're going to end up with a jumper that's going to be that size when you really need it to be this size. So if we...
that feels like you've washed it already.
Yeah, the stitches are
shrunk.
Closer together, they're more dense. The fabric doesn't have that nice drape that's especially important in garments. You might find in toys that the tension's actually quite tight, and that's generally to avoid the stuffing from coming out.
These were all knitted on with the same needles?
That's right, but if you knit very tightly, you might have your yarn just at the tip of your needles, and you think you're, you know, being quite efficient, but actually you're making the stitches very tight. You'll find it quite hard work. Conversely, if your knitting is too loose, you might be spreading your needles really wide and wrapping the yarn around. You're working very loosely. And also, if your tension is too loose, you'll end up using more yarn, and
it would be more costly.
You might run out.
Yes.
If you're doing a big item like a garment, you could possibly run out of yarn.
Funnily enough, I've got a question about that, because I was thinking, you know, when you're wallpapering a room and you estimate you might need, I don't know, 8 rolls, and actually you end up needing 10, and you need to buy a couple more, that's a shame, because you always need the same batch number, ideally, of wallpaper.
That's right.
Do you need the same batch number of yarn?
Yes, you do, and that sort of information is on the ball band. make sure you do buy enough yarn, and again your pattern will tell you how much yarn to buy, and again that's why you really want to get your tension right to start with, to save you all of that trouble. So it's really a stage that it might seem like a bit of a drag, but it's so worth it. It will make all the difference to getting the right result in the end.
Very good. Talking of which, is that a tension square?
Yes.
Aha.
So when you've got your tension square, you probably want to cast on a few more stitches and make it a little bit bigger. This is just about perfect. The tension square is always stated as how many stitches and rows you get to 10 centimetres square. So we're going to measure across here. So
It's always 10 centimetres.
That's the standard,
Okay.
yep. So we'll just go along the bottom where we can see those stitches more clearly. So we're going to count the V's. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So
Yes.
that's 12 stitches in a row.
12 V's, yeah.
And then we're going to check the number of rows. So again, I'm going to measure against the V's, get a nice straight bit. So going from the top, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 to the end of my 10 centimetres.
Okay.
So that's the number of rows and stitches I've got in my 10 centimetre swatch, and I compare that to my pattern, and then I decide if I need to change it at all. Tension is one of those things, it's totally individual. It all depends on how you knit, and you can try and adjust it, but sometimes it's just better to sort of change your needle size. So if you're meant to be working with 6mm needles and your square is too big, then what you can do is you can go down in size, and you can see the difference there in the shaft.
And then you will naturally have to have a smaller stitch, because otherwise it would drop off the needle.
Exactly.
So you train yourself into being a tighter knitter.
I don't know about that. I would just say that it's easier to change your needles,
Okay.
and you might need to do another 1 or 2 tension squares. It just depends really how far off the measure you are. So needles come in millimetres. You can get quarter sizes, so this might have been started on 6mm. To make your knitting a bit tighter, you might want to go down to a 5.75mm needle or
Okay.
a 5.5mm needle.
Okay, and I like these. Are these bamboo? Because they're very
Yes.
eco-friendly,
Yes,
aren't
that's
they?
right, yes, and they do feel nice as well. If your knitting is too tight, then what you'd need to do is use a bigger needle so that your stitches are bigger. It's not quite so noticeable. Oh yes, there we go. So we can see there again the difference in the needle size, and it's the shaft of the needle that changes the size of your
Right.
stitches. So you can carry on sort of knitting as you were before, if that's your natural way of knitting, but the needles do the work for you, so you
Yes.
can concentrate on knitting in that lovely, rhythmic way, and your piece will come up. But again, you should make sure you do your tension square to make sure you're spot on, and then away you can go.
So getting your tension right in the beginning is going to actually lead you to better habits as well, and get you sort of really on the straight and narrow for making better garments.
Definitely, it's really worth doing your tension square and getting it right, so you get the result the designer intended, and it'll look like the picture, so you'll
what
get
we
the right
want.
size.
Okay, thanks Nettie. Thank you for joining us. See you again soon.